To me, the most beautiful word in the dictionary is tariff, and it's my favorite word.
A signature statement, a defining stance on global trade today. But what if that very conviction, those very words, weren't spoken now? What if they, from a century ago? From 1929 by Donald Trump. That's a perspective from the 21st century, but the concept of using tariffs as a primary tool in trade is far from new. Economic history reveals a recurring pattern. The battle for markets using tariffs has been fought for centuries. Exactly. A century ago, the world was already caught in the grip of intense trade conflicts, setting the stage for the dark era of the Great Depression. Let's step back into the 1920s, heading into the abyss of the early 1930s. We know the notorious policies of the time, like America's Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act, a move that helped trigger the collapse of global trade. But what if the man in charge back then wasn't the traditional politician, Herbert Hoover? What if, by some twist of fate, the President of the United States in 1929 was Donald J. Trump? With his no-nonsense approach, his readiness to hit them with tariffs, how would Tariff Man navigate the trade landscape of 100 years? Ego, join us as we explore this extraordinary historical hypothetical. Following the devastation of World War I, nations across the globe focused on rebuilding. A common strategy emerged: prioritize domestic markets and protect nascent or war-damaged industries. Protectionism, primarily through high tariffs, became a widespread practice. Each country feared being swamped by foreign goods, potentially crippling their own producers. In an era before comprehensive multilateral agreements, countries largely acted alone or through limited, often competitive, bilateral deals. By the late 1920s, the American economy showed signs of strain, particularly in agriculture. Under pressure from powerful interest groups, Congress began drafting a bill to raise import duties. What started as a focus on farm goods quickly expanded, thanks to intense lobbying, ballooning to include tariffs on thousands of industrial products. Over 1,000 economists famously warned President Hoover, signing a petition urging him to veto the bill, predicting disaster. Yet, in June 1930, despite these dire warnings, the Smoot-Hawley Act was signed into law. It was one of the most aggressive protectionist measures in modern history. The global reaction was swift and severe. Country after country responded with their own retaliatory tariffs on American goods. International trade, already weakened by the brewing recession, was dealt a fatal blow. In just a few years, global trade volume collapsed by a staggering 66%. Instead of protecting the US economy, Smoot-Hawley choked off trade, exacerbated the Great Depression worldwide, and fueled deep international resentment. Now, let's turn back the clock. Not to history as it happened, but to a fascinating what if. Imagine the 1928 election and the unexpected victory of Donald J. Trump. He steps into the presidency in March 1929, on the very cusp of the economic storm and heightening trade tensions. This isn't a historical approximation. This is a modern Donald Trump, with his familiar rhetoric, strategies, and style, suddenly navigating a world profoundly different from his own. We are well acquainted with Donald Trump's unique perspective on global trade. He famously sees trade deficits as a sign of losing, arguing other nations are taking advantage of the United States. And his go-to solution, his primary weapon, tariffs, label he has proudly embraced. Tariff Man, his stated goal: shield American industries and jobs using tariffs as powerful leverage for better, usually bilateral deals. So, how would this distinct approach manifest when thrown into the complex, volatile economic and political landscape of the 1930s? Taking the oath in '29, Trump witnesses the Wall Street crash firsthand. The signs of depression are undeniable. Factories silent, millions losing work. And in typical Trump fashion, the blame is quickly assigned. Other countries. They are dumping products, stealing our jobs, and unfairly exploiting the American market. unlike the slow grind of Hoover's era. Trump's response would be swift, immediate.
It's a disaster, a total disaster. These countries are ripping us off. They're taking our jobs. This won't stand. We need to hit back, and we need to hit back hard. Believe me, we're not waiting.
Historically, the Smoot-Hawley Act was a product of intense, drawn-out congressional negotiation and debate. But Trump's presidency showed a clear preference for executive action, bypassing lengthy legislative processes whenever possible. Forget months of debate on Capitol Hill. Trump would likely bypass Congress entirely, issuing executive orders under claims of economic or even national security emergencies. This rapid, unilateral approach is classic Trump: fast, powerful, and with minimal traditional checks.
Just signed an order, effective immediately. Big tariffs. Nobody else would do it. The swamp in Congress is too slow. We don't have time, we act now.
Facing an economy spiraling into chaos, President Trump wasted no time. His solution was swift, direct, and utterly uncompromising. Forget cautious diplomacy. His approach was a thunderous declaration of intent felt across the globe. He unleashed a torrent of heavy tariffs on nearly everything attempting to enter US ports, from British steel to the fine French wines to German cars and Canadian timber, all suddenly burdened by unprecedented duties. This was the Tariff Man instant war, a bold, audacious gamble. His message was clear: pay the tax or don't trade. He sought to protect American industry.
We are putting massive tariffs on everything. Everything. Steel, agriculture, cars. If it comes in and it's hurting American jobs, it gets a big tariff. 45%, 50%, maybe even more. These countries have gotten away with murder for too long, but not anymore. They will pay. It's simple.
For the Tariff Man, these were more than tariffs. They were pure leverage to drag reluctant nations to the negotiating table where he held every advantage. His aggressive economic power was intended to isolate and weaken his opponents. His strategy was simple: demand sweeping concessions, threaten higher tariffs, and play hardball. In a world reeling from the Great Depression, desperate for trade and stability, nations found themselves backed into a corner. Their industries faltered, their people suffered, forcing them to negotiate, not as equals, but on his unilateral terms. It was a negotiation by attrition, with the world's economic future hanging in the balance.
Look, they're calling. They want to make a deal. I told you. Nobody makes deals like I do. All right, you want these tariffs removed? Let's talk. But it's going to be a great deal. For America.
History offers a clear and predictable lesson. Aggressive tariffs provoke retaliation. As countries feel the pressure, the inevitable question arises: how will Tariff Man respond when the world inevitably retaliates? Will he back down? Unlikely. His response will be classic, delivered with characteristic defiance.
Some weak countries are foolishly trying to hit back with tariffs. Pathetic. Totally unacceptable. If they don't stop, we will hit them with even bigger tariffs. They will regret this. Tariff Man, winning.
Putting Trump's aggressive, unpredictable approach into the fragile economic ecosystem of the 1930s paints a bleak picture. With rapidly escalating tariffs on both sides, global trade would not only slow, but would likely collapse even faster, and deeper than it has historically. American industries, though protected, would suffer as supply chains were crippled and key export markets were lost. Farmers, the group often cited as needing protection, would face devastating losses as other countries stopped buying their products. The Great Depression, in this hypothetical, could easily have been much more severe and prolonged. Examining this hypothetical scenario against the real history of Smoot-Hawley reveals a profound lesson. Regardless of the era or individual in charge, extreme unilateral protectionism tends to follow a predictable and damaging path of retaliation. In an interconnected world, stifling trade with others inevitably hurts your own economy. The Smoot-Hawley disaster of the 1930s and the trade tensions of the modern era serve as stark and costly reminders of this basic economic principle. The tools may evolve, from acts of Congress to executive orders and tweets, but the underlying motivation and potential for self-harm remain eerily similar. So that's our hypothetical journey. Tariff Man, navigating the trade wars of 100 years ago. A fascinating, if perhaps unsettling, thought experiment about how individual leadership styles can impact global events and the lasting lessons of history. Trade policy in any era remains a complex challenge with significant consequences. What do you think of this scenario? Would Trump's approach have produced a different outcome than the 1930s, or would it have led to an even deeper crisis? Share your thoughts and insights in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. If you found this exploration interesting and informative, please give the video a like and share it with anyone who might find it thought-provoking. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell, so you don't miss future videos where we explore history's fascinating what-ifs. Thank you for watching.